Hi, Algebra 1. So we are going to start your study guide today for factoring. So hopefully, if you guys need an extra review, some extra help with the study guide, you guys can always go back and watch those videos that I've made already, or you guys can come to office hours and get that extra help that you guys need. So we are just going to start with the study guide and go from there. So we look, first thing we need to do is kind of figure out what type of polynomial is it. And so we have 7y to the 8th plus 20y. And so I look and there's two terms. They're not subtracting. And I notice that they both have something in common. So the first thing you should always do is find the GCF. And so I look at 7y to the 8th plus 20y, and I notice that they both have a y in common. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start by factoring out a y. Now I can only factor out one y because the lowest amount of y's here between y8 and y1 is y1. Okay, I also, before that, I should have talked about this first, but look at the numbers between 7 and 20. Is there any number that goes evenly into both 7 and 20? And there isn't. So then I write what's left. So 7y to the 8th divided by y gets me 7y to the 7th. And then 20y divided by y gets me 20. So that's my final answer. And then, before I were to rewrite this, I would think, is there anything more I can do? Again, it's not subtracting, so we can't think difference of squares, and these both aren't perfect squares. There's not another GCF, so that is my final answer. Y times 7y to the 7th plus 20. Okay, and then let's get going with the second one. Okay, so number 2, there's 3 terms. There's a lot of variables there. So what I'm thinking first is 25, 15, and 5. Well, there's definitely a GCF that I can factor out of there first. And so what I'm thinking is, 25, 15, 5. What number goes evenly into all 3 of those numbers? It's 5. And then I look at A. They all have an A term. The smallest amount of A's that I can take out is A to the first power. And then I look B. Oh, this one doesn't have a B. So that is our GCF. So then I divide everything through by 5A. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. A cubed divided by A is A squared. And then B squared just comes down because it hasn't changed. There's nothing that could simplify with 5A. And then negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. A squared divided by A is A. And then again, same with this B here. It doesn't, there's nothing you can do. And then 5A divided by 5A, well, anything divided by itself is 1. Remember, you guys can always check these to make sure that it gets you the same answer. So 5A times 5A squared B squared gets me 25A cubed B squared, which is what we have here. And then 5A times negative 3AB is negative 15A squared B, which is there, and 5A times 1 is 5A. Now, if I get factor this further, which I can't because there's just too many variables, I wouldn't throw something like that at you guys for a test or something. So your final answer, to factor as a trinomial, that's what I mean. Your final answer is 5A squared B squared minus 3AB plus 1. So just a GCF there. Okay, so let's look at 3. 3 has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Whenever we have 4 terms, what method do we start to think about? When we have 4 terms, we think about grouping. And so remember with grouping, we start by splitting it in 2 terms in the front and 2 terms in the back. And I think, okay, between x cubed and 3x squared, what's my GCF here? And my GCF, they both have an x. The smaller of the two is x squared, so I can factor out an x squared. X cubed divided by x squared is x, and 3x squared divided by x squared is 3. And then bring down that sign. Remember, we always have to bring down that sign. Whatever sign it is, we have to bring down the middle sign. And then 4x plus 12, my GCF between 4x plus 12, well, they both don't have an x. So I look at the number. Does 4 go evenly into 12? It does, so my GCF is 4. 4x divided by 4 is x, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. Remember, these have to be the same, or you can't move forward. If these aren't the same, which they are here, if these aren't the same, you've done something wrong. You've got to go back and check your work. But because these are the same, you're good, and we can write it as 1. So it's x plus 3, and then what's left? X squared plus 4. You can write that in any order. It can be x squared plus 4 and x plus 3. Either way is totally fine. And that is that. So you guys, again, as we're going through these, if you guys have any questions, please bring them to office hours. I'd be happy to help you guys out with any of these. So, yeah, bring them to office hours and we'll make sure that you get them answered. Okay, so let's look at 4. 4 has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. There's not a GCF from every single term, so we always are going to start with 4 terms with grouping. So again, that splits into first 2 terms and second 2 terms. Okay, so 3x cubed minus 9x squared. I first look at my number, 3 and 9. Does 3 go evenly into 9? And it does. And then they both have an x squared. So I can factor out a 3 and I can factor out x squared. So 3x cubed divided by 3x squared is going to be 3 divided by 3 is 1, and then x cubed divided by x squared is x. Minus, okay, 9 divided by 3 is 3, and x squared divided by x squared is 1. Always bring down my middle sign, so my middle sign is a plus. And then I'm going to look between my numbers. So 2 and 6. Does 2 go evenly into 6? It does. And then only one of the terms has an x, so 2 is my only thing here. So 2x divided by 2 is x, and negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. We always check, are these the same? X minus 3 and x minus 3, are those the same? And they are, so we are good to go. My final answer is going to be 3x squared plus 2 times x minus 3. And again, it doesn't matter what order you write those in, as long as the order inside the parentheses stays the same. So like this parentheses, this whole thing could be here, but you can't like flip-flop the order of like what's in the parentheses. Okay, so for number 5, again, we look, is there a GCF? And there isn't. So then we think, okay, there's 4 terms, so we're going to factor by grouping. So factoring by grouping, I have my first 2 terms and my last 2 terms. So 5x cubed minus 5x squared, I think about what's my GCF. First, they both have a 5, so I'm like, great, I'm going to factor out a 5. And then x cubed and x squared, they both have an x, so I'm going to factor out the smaller of the two, x squared. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and x cubed divided by x squared is x. And then negative 5x squared divided by 5x squared, anything divided by itself is 1, and this one is a minus 1. We always bring down that sign. Now this one is negative, so that means these, like on the inside, are going to change. So I look to see, okay, x and 1, is there a GCF between those? And there isn't any number or variable that divides evenly into that. So when there isn't anything, we can always divide through by 1. Now remember, we're dividing through by negative 1. So negative x divided by negative 1 gets me positive x. And 1 divided by negative 1 gets me negative 1, which works because now we check, are these the same? And they are. So because they are, we can write it as 1. So x minus 1 is one of my factors. And what's left, 5x squared minus 1, is another one of my factors. Doesn't matter what order you guys write it in. Whatever you do is fine. Okay, last problem on this page. So we have 4 terms, and there are no GCFs between all 4 terms, so we are going to factor by grouping. Lots of grouping. So we look at our first 2 terms and then our last 2 terms, and we get our GCF. So between 2 and 5, I think, can I divide 2 into 5? And I can't. Is there anything smaller? And there isn't, so I go to the variables. X cubed, x squared. They both have an x, so I can factor out an x squared. And then I'm left with 2x plus 5. 2x cubed divided by x squared leaves me 2x, and 5x squared divided by x squared leaves me with 5. So then I always bring down my sign, and then I think, okay, 8x and 20. Does 8 go evenly into 20? And it doesn't, so I think smaller. What number goes evenly into both 8 and 20? And so some of you guys might be thinking 2, but there's a bigger number. 4 actually goes evenly into both of these. So we're going to factor out a negative 4. So negative 8x divided by negative 4 is positive 2x. And negative 20 divided by negative 4 is positive 5. Now, are these the same? And they are, which is great. So we can write it as 1. 2x plus 5. And then what's left? Now, what's left, we have 2x plus 5 times x squared minus 4. Now, some of you guys hopefully are seeing x squared minus 4 is one of our special cases. X squared minus 4, there's something more we can do with that. There are 2 terms. They're both perfect squares, and they're subtracting. Now, this one, we couldn't do anything with it because they're not both perfect squares. 5x squared isn't a perfect square, but they are subtracting, which didn't help. Now, this one up here, same thing. Okay, this is a perfect square. This is a perfect square, but they're not subtracting. So this is kind of all marks, like checks all the boxes here for a difference of squares. So 2x plus 5 stays the same, but now x squared minus 4 is one of my special cases. It's a difference of square. So that, remember, that goes into our 2 parentheses. What's the square root of x squared? X and x. What's the square root of 4? 2 and 2. And then it's a plus and a minus. So that is fully factored. So we went and continued. This is a difference of squares. So my final answer that's fully factored is 2x plus 5 times x plus 2 times x minus 2. This is factored, but this is fully factored. So you have to be careful and make sure you're always checking, is this as factored as it can be? And if not, what can I do more? So I'm going to pause the video here and start on new video for the next page, just trying to like split it up a little bit so it's not one whole video. So I'm going to pause here. I'll continue with 7 on the next video. So, yeah, you guys can take a break, get a snack, do what you need to do, and then come back and you guys can finish the study guide video. Okie dokie.